Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to analyze Mikel Arteta's tactical adjustments in Arsenal's 2-1 win over Sheffield United. But before we do that, don't forget to look at my player analysis on Thomas Partey as he looks to become Arsenal's big money summer signing. But when we break down this game and we do look at the board, we have Sheffield United in a 3-5-2, and without the ball, they dropped off deeper in a 5-3-2. That means that you have the forwards looking to step forward to press, and then you have the midfield in a narrow 3 with the shuttlers in Lundstrom and Osborne looking to push out to the Arsenal fullbacks. When we look to Arsenal shape, we were expecting a 3-4-3 that ultimately shifted to a 4-man backline with Tierney joining Bellerin by pushing forward higher up the pitch. What we ended up seeing from Arsenal is that at times it did look like a 3-1-3-3, and there were occasions where it did look like a 3-1-4-2. When it looked like a 3-1-3-3, what you ended up seeing was that Ceballos was holding that central midfield position, and then Elneny was dropping to the right of David Luiz, with Gabriel shifting over towards that left channel for cover. And that ended up seeing the wingbacks level with Saka, and then the front three in Aubameyang and Nketiah and Willian looking to push forward at the Sheffield backline. If it did look like more of a 3-1-4-2, it was because Aubameyang was tucking in narrow and Willian was dropping off into a deeper midfield position. So when we look to how Sheffield United aimed to disrupt Arsenal's build-up play, they had McGoldrick and Burke sitting in between Ceballos, and if you had McGoldrick stepping into the path of David Luiz, then Burke would sit on Ceballos, and vice versa. If Burke shifted out into the path of Gabriel, then you would have McGoldrick sitting on Ceballos. So that was how they ensured that Ceballos couldn't get involved in the game, and we saw Elneny dropping off deeper into that right channel, looking to offer cover for Bellerin pushing forward, but to also get on the ball. So with the Arsenal midfield shut out of the game, Arteta's side were forced to build attacks out in the wider areas, and there was a contrast in how Sheffield United coped with Arsenal's threats down their left-hand side and their right-hand side. Sheffield United did a much better job on their left-hand side, as they did have Osborne stepping out into the path of Elneny, and that meant that you had Stevens pushing out in towards Bellerin, and with Willian dropping off deeper, you would want Robinson to step into his path, but because Sheffield United had spare men in that midfield zone, you would see Berga stepping towards Willian to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball freely. The other alternatives down Sheffield United's left-hand side would have Robinson stepping out into the path of Willian, with again Osborne pushing to Elneny and Stevens pushing into the path of Bellerin. But if that wasn't the case, what we would end up seeing is Osborne shifting out into the path of Bellerin, and then have Berga step out to Elneny, with Robinson closing down Willian. However, it was on Sheffield United's right-hand side where Arsenal were able to find a few openings in that first half. The reason being was that Arsenal found gaps to play balls out to Tierney, and Gabriel was able to bypass Burke on several occasions. What we ended up seeing down that left-hand side is that Tierney was eager to push forward, and that means that Lundstrom has to step out into his path. And if Lundstrom steps out into his path, that creates a huge gap for Bukayo Saka to drop into, to receive the ball from Gabriel if Burke isn't looking to close him down quickly. The other issue that Sheffield United encountered down that side was that there were times where Lundstrom wasn't able to step out into the path of Tierney, and if Aubameyang holds his position ahead of Baldock, then that creates a 2v1 situation unless Basham does step forward. And even if we don't look at that 2v1 situation, if Aubameyang looks to shift central across Baldock into the path of Basham, then that creates space for Tierney to run off Lundstrom, and that creates avenues for Saka to play in Tierney, or you could have Gabriel or David Luiz clip diagonal balls out into that Arsenal left back. When we look to a few examples from that opening half, Saka and Nketiah are the key men. Initially, what we see is the Luiz clipping a diagonal ball to Aubameyang ahead of Baldock, with Tierney pushing forward to create a 2v1 overload. Aubameyang moves central to clip the ball over Egan and Robinson for Nketiah darting into that gap, but his first touch lets him down into right half space, and he can't get a shot off against Ramsdale as he slips. When we look to another example, we have Gabriel stepping into Sheffield United's half to play a pass across Burke, and that pass splits Berga and Osborne for Nketiah dropping off into space, and in that same play we witness Saka darting between Berga and Lundstrom, looking to push into that gap between Baldock and Basham. But when Nketiah receives that ball from Gabriel, he plays a first-time pass into the path of Saka, but it's comfortably stepped into by Basham. Minutes later, we witness Ceballos pushing forward into the Sheffield United half to slide the ball across Lundstrom for Tierney pushing forward, and that's where we witness Saka ahead of Baldock and Basham. Tierney's able to locate Nketiah darting between Egan and Robinson, but when he clips that ball in towards the path of the Arsenal forward, he nods a tame header across Robinson on goal. And when we look to one final example, again, it's Gabriel sliding the ball across Burke for Tierney. And that's when we see Saka ahead of Berga and Lundstrom and Aubameyang darting between Baldock and Basham. Tierney wraps the ball around Lundstrom for Nketiah dropping off of Egan. But when Nketiah receives that ball, he's swarmed by the Sheffield United center back. And his first touch is heavy, which allows Baldock to clear danger. So while Nketiah's movement was good in that first half, he lacked the quality to make a difference in the final third. The same could be said about Saka, who constantly popped up into gaps in that midfield zone and was able to help Arsenal push forward. When we look to an example of Saka's play, we have Ceballos sliding the ball out to Tierney, which pulls out Baldock, and Tierney splits Lundstrom and Baldock to play in Saka in a pocket of space, and he slides it wide to Aubameyang to pull out Basham. Aubameyang slides the ball across Basham for Saka, continuing his run beyond Lundstrom into left half space, but his cross in towards the box was tame and Egan cleared it. When we look to another example, we have Elneny in that deep right side position, clipping a diagonal ball out to Tierney, and Aubameyang drags Baldock narrow. Tierney is swarmed by Lundstrom and Baldock, but he ends up squaring the ball to Nketiah, who slides a first-time pass into Saka in the left channel, and he wraps the ball around Basham for Aubameyang, but Egan ends up clearing it. Once again, we could see Ceballos helping Arsenal push forward, and he slides the ball across Lundstrom for Tierney in an advanced position. And this time Tierney slides the ball across Baldock for Saka, who was initially in a narrow midfield position, darting between Baldock and Basham to take his first touch beyond Basham down the left channel, but Baldock did well to recover to make a sliding tackle. And if we look to one final example, with Ceballos blocked out by both Sheffield strikers, Luiz clips a diagonal ball out to Tierney, who lays it off to Aubameyang on that left touchline ahead of Baldock, and we see Tierney run between Baldock and Lundstrom to eventually receive the poke pass from Aubameyang. But with Lundstrom tracking back to close down Tierney, his cross into towards the box was once again cleared by Egan. However, when we shift to the second half, the minor tactical tweak that we witnessed from Arteta's side was that the midfielders in Elneny and Ceballos were pushing into more advanced positions, and they played a key role in some of Arsenal's best moves. When we look to one example, we have Saka carrying the ball across Baldock and Lundstrom, and he slides it to Willian, and this is where we see Ceballos pushing forward into the free space that Saka's movement created. As Willian drags out Stevens and Osborne, he slides the ball to Saka ahead of Berga, who instantly plays it to Ceballos in and around that Sheffield United box. That's when you see Aubameyang dropping off to pull out Basham and then spinning around him to try and receive Ceballos' first time pass ahead of that 6-yard box, but it slightly evades him. Shortly after that, Pepe did replace Nketiah, pushing Aubameyang into that central role, and now Arsenal had more reliable link-up play from Aubameyang, and we saw Willian shift out to the left-hand side, meaning that now Arsenal had two inverted wingers who are looking to cut onto their stronger foot to present a goal threat. And shortly after that, that's when we witness Arsenal take the lead. We have Willian and Pepe both in that right channel, and Pepe drops the ball across Berga for Elneny, breaking towards the edge of the box, and he slides it across Robinson and Egan for Aubameyang, pulling out Basham, and Aubameyang slides the first time ball across Robinson for Bellerin, breaking off Osborne and Stevens. And when Bellerin receives that ball towards the byline, he locates Saka free beyond Baldock, and he clips the ball towards that back post, and Saka is able to nod Arsenal ahead. And Arsenal were able to double their lead minutes later, and it stemmed through Elneny dropping off into a deeper right-sided position and sliding the ball out to Pepe, dropping off towards the halfway line. Stevens steps into his path, and that's where we should see Fleck shifting across to close down Pepe. Because Stevens does step forward and Bellerin shifts across into a narrow pocket of space, that creates a huge gap between Robinson and Bellerin. So if Fleck steps into the path of Pepe, Stevens could push narrow to close down Bellerin, and then Robinson can provide cover. But because both Sheffield United players shift into the path of Pepe, if Pepe ends up splitting Fleck and Stevens to play a pass into Bellerin, if he runs towards goal, then Robinson has to step. That ends up happening, but Bellerin ends up playing the pass across Robinson into the path of Pepe, running off Stevens, and that allows Pepe to run at Egan towards the box and finish superbly beyond Ramsdale to ultimately kill off the game.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the Interview show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the Interviews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.